Brigitte Macron is out. At this point, the entire world practically knows about the defamation lawsuit that the president of France and his wife have filed against Candace Owens in the United States. By the way, I didn't mention this, but Candace did file a motion to dismiss back in September, I believe. I'll briefly talk about it towards the end of the video just to let you know what her grounds for dismissal are. But first, I would like to discuss a trial, a criminal trial that has just recently concluded. The verdict hasn't been released yet. We're going to have to wait for January. Filed by Brigitte Macron last year in 2024 against 10 defendants for alleged online harassment. So this is not a civil case, which is the nature of the case filed against Candace. These people, if found guilty, could face up to 2 years in prison for social media posts that they have made in relation to Brigitte Macron's gender, questions surrounding it, and the age gap between her and her now husband. So the 10 defendants, who are all French citizens as per my understanding, aged between 41 to 60 and all deny wrongdoing, have been accused of making numerous malicious comments about Brigitte Macron's gender and sexuality, even equating her age difference with her husband to pedophilia, according to prosecutors. In Brigitte's complaint to the police, she informed them that these comments were, quote, hateful, and that it had become incredibly difficult for her grandchildren because they go to school, and her daughter has testified saying that her children's lives in school have become nightmares because people have started allegedly bullying them and telling them, oh, your grandma's a man. Now, these defendants, by the way, are not famous podcasters or online personalities like Candace Owens. From my understanding, they are regular citizens, private citizens. One of them is an IT technician, Jerome, who's 49 years old. And he claimed that this is all just, sarcasm. This is all humor. It's a joke. He has a very small following on Twitter, and his posts were all made in a, quote, satirical spirit. Jerome even told the head judge that, quote, like a lot of people, I'm asking why I'm here today. Today, you can send people to court for tweets, end quote. He went on to say that Brigitte Macron, as a very powerful person, should accept being criticized. He denied harassment, of course, and said that he believed that he hadn't broken the law. Another defendant by the name of Jerome C. I don't know if these are pseudonyms just to protect their privacy, but they could just be a very common name in France, Jérôme, told the court that he liked posting on social media from his sofa and it was all just humor, saying, quote, do you need a permit in France to crack a joke? End quote. He did, however, admit to sharing posts about Brigitte being a man or a pedophile in order to inform others, but he denied harassment. Now, this is interesting because this is a bit of a contradiction here. On the one hand, he says it's a joke, but on the other, he's saying, I'm raising awareness. I'm informing people. The two don't really go hand in hand. You don't raise awareness about a joke. Interestingly, among the defendants is a woman whom you might all have heard of before. Amandine Roy is her pseudonym or her nickname that she goes by. The medium who was sued for defamation by Brigitte Macron for spreading the rumor, starting the rumor that Brigitte is allegedly a man. Now, this defamation case, while initially won by Brigitte, was later overturned recently, relatively recently, by the Court of Appeal in Paris because the comments were found to have been made without malice. But here she is. Brigitte is not letting her go as a defendant now in this criminal trial, which is obviously a lot more serious and consequential than a civil trial because she can risk having a criminal record along with the other defendants. Just to get the obvious out of the way, yes, of course, you can technically prosecute people for online harassment and cyberbullying. Even though I moved to France earlier this year, I qualified as a lawyer in Australia. I do not work as a lawyer in France, by the way. It is a civil law system, so entirely different from our common law system. So I'm not too well versed with the French ways as it were. But in Australia, cyberbullying and online harassment, stalking, are also prosecutable crimes. However, the difference being, seriously, when was the last time you heard of someone successfully being prosecuted for the shenanigans that they get up to online? I personally have had a stalker and a harasser for years, the same person in real life and online. And while I did successfully get a restraining order, courts were involved, and that seemed to have dealt with the issue, thankfully. I mean, I'm now in a different country, but it never needed to go as far as criminal charges. However, I'm going to be honest with you, I doubt that it would ever have gone to court. Because think about it. There are millions of people getting harassed and bullied online as we speak. And if every single one of them was prosecuted, there would be no more spaces available in prison. All right. So this is a severely under prosecuted crime. And I believe it does stir up a very interesting conversation with this being a very high profile case. Because on the one hand, it is arguable that these crimes, alleged crimes, should be prosecuted and taken seriously. They can drive people to ending their own lives if they go out of control. I went through years of feeling incredibly fearful for my life. In fact, it's the reason I moved out of Australia. And so these things are quite serious. On the other hand, I do find it quite elitist that, of all people, the wife of a president was able to file criminal charges and have them successfully prosecuted for alleged online bullying and harassment. So I suppose the discussion is, well, should we just open up this avenue for everyone, not just presidents and the wives of presidents? Or is this a step too far? And are we veering towards really draconian, medieval ways of censorship? Where should we draw the line? Should lies and rumors be defeated through defamation claims? Well, here's the problem. Defamation can only be brought by people who can afford to do so. And so again, we get into this discrepancy in terms of what avenues are available for the rich and powerful and what avenues are available for the rest of us. This case raises quite a few interesting questions. First of all, why is Brigitte pursuing the criminal avenue rather than another defamation case against all of these defendants? I do wonder whether she went down this criminal route because of the fact that her defamation claim had been defeated. She is appealing it. Apparently she and her brother, Jean-Michel Trogneux, are appealing that ruling. As I said, the French legal system is so foreign to me. They don't necessarily have the standards of proof that we are used to in common law jurisdictions such as Australia and the United States. So, for instance, in common law, the burden of proof in criminal cases is much higher, being beyond a reasonable doubt. Whereas in civil cases, which defamation falls under, it's on the balance of probabilities or the preponderance of the evidence. So at least a 51% chance that the allegation took place. In France, the standard of proof is personal conviction, where judges determine guilt based on their personal conviction formed from the proof presented. Again, I'm not too well versed at all with the intricacies of that. So is that a difficult standard? It would be very interesting to hear, I suppose, from French lawyers, if anyone's watching, but it doesn't read as high level, I suppose, or as strict. Not to mention that the judges are free to determine guilt rather than a jury panel. This could explain why Brigitte decided to go down the criminal route because, well, it's a lot scarier, a much more effective deterrent to other people. And also, the standard may not be that much more difficult than pursuing a defamation case. Not to mention the government deals with criminal prosecutions rather than Brigitte having to pay out of her own pocket. The other interesting question that can arise here is freedom of expression, I suppose. France doesn't have the exact, same First Amendment that America enjoys. They do have protections for freedom of speech, but hate speech is specifically excluded, and you can be liable for criminal prosecution in addition to defamation. This isn't unique to France. In Australia, as I mentioned, you can be criminally prosecuted for what you say and do online. It's just that it rarely happens. The rest of us are left to suffer while elitists who run the government are allowed to use and bend the law to their will. So if you ask me, if the president's wife is allowed to bring criminal accusations against people for online harassment, then that avenue should be open to the rest of us. And the police should really stop turning down civilians who show up and say, hey, help me, I fear for my life, which isn't even the level of harassment and fear that is being instilled in Brigitte. This is all making her life difficult, according to her, but it's not exactly putting her life at risk. I have made it clear that I don't know the truth when it comes to the nature of the allegations surrounding Brigitte's gender. They claim that they can scientifically prove in their trial against Candace Owens, if it gets to trial, that Brigitte is a woman. But it goes without saying that if these claims are indeed untrue, then one can understand how they can cause severe distress to someone in Brigitte Macron's position. Interesting question for you. Was Jérôme C. right? Should she, as a wife of a president, have a thicker skin and just accept that this level of scrutiny and criticism comes with the territory? Or are people taking it too far? Other than the whole gender question, of course, comes the age gap and the pedophile accusations. This one is a lot more, I hate this word, but nuanced than the other. And I say that because it is undeniable that the way in which Brigitte and Macron met and formed their relationship when he was 14 and she was basically 40 is very questionable, to say the least. And if anything, people should be allowed to raise their eyebrows and comment on the age discrepancy. Now, whether we can full on call her a pedophile, I mean, look, we weren't there. Their official story is that nothing inappropriate happened until Macron was of age. And that is all we have to go by for now. It doesn't look like any of these defendants have any evidence to prove the accusation, because they all seem to rely on the defense of, this was just satire, it's just a joke. You know, this isn't something to be taken seriously. Now, to argue that someone is a pedophile or to state that someone is a pedophile is not technically a statement of opinion. It's a statement of fact. I've said in prior videos that a statement of fact is something that can be proven to either be true or false. It's kind of black and white, you know, whereas opinions are gray. And to say that someone is a pedophile or a groomer is something that can be either proven or disproven. Now, you can always argue that it's an opinion. That argument will always be open to the other side. I'm just saying that by the strict definition of a statement of fact, it doesn't look like opinion would cut it. Which brings me to Candace Owens. We've discussed her case before. I've briefly listed what the Macrons have to prove and to what standard to be victorious in trial. Candace has filed a motion to dismiss back in September, and it's really primarily based on the court's jurisdiction. The case has been filed in Delaware because that is where her companies, which own the podcast, which produce the podcast, I guess, are based. In a nutshell, just very broadly, Candace is arguing that's not sufficient to establish jurisdiction over Candace. She lives in Tennessee. The greatest harm was done in France. And so Delaware has nothing to do with it. It's going to cause undue hardship on Candace to have to go to Delaware to face trial. And she's arguing that the statute of limitations that should apply is the French one, which is only 3 months, believe it or not, when it comes to defamation cases. I wonder if that's why Brigitte went down the criminal route again here, because maybe the statute of limitations elapsed. 3 months is really nothing. Whereas in the States, specifically in Delaware, it's 2 years. And so she's arguing they're forum shopping. They picked the most convenient forum for them, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that. I still have no word on what the ruling is regarding that motion to dismiss. If it's successful, if somehow Candace manages to pull this off, well, at least the trial in Delaware isn't going to go anywhere. All this to say, it looks like Brigitte Macron really is going to stop at nothing to quash these rumors and allegations, whether it's in France and whether it's Candace Owens in the United States. I think she's really going to push this as far as she can. She definitely has the resources. I mean, her husband is the president, to push this as far as she can. I feel like I'm a broken record when I say I highly doubt a private citizen would have been able to convince the police to prosecute one defendant, let alone 10, for serious accusations of online harassment and bullying. But here we are, I suppose, in a cynical way. This is elitism at its finest. What I want to post to you in the comments is, what do you think about bringing criminal charges against people who say or do things online that make you upset? Is it a form of censorship, especially given her position as the wife of the president of France? Or is it something that should be utilized as a tool to make people behave online? Now, obviously, the purpose of a trial is to determine whether these accusations hold any water. So if they truly were jokes or, made lightheartedly or satirically, then if the law works properly, which it rarely does, these people should have nothing to worry about. I mean, the internet is the Wild West. People can say the most heinous things about others and really, get away with it unscathed. So I see room for arguing that these behaviors, if proven to be true, should be dealt with accordingly. But on the other hand, it does demonstrate that there is a fine line that can potentially be crossed by powerful people, especially if this avenue is only available to them. This can easily be wielded as a form of censorship against the people if only powerful people can do it. And by the way, because I know I'm going to get this comment, yes, this happened around just under a month ago. But as I said, the verdict is not out yet. And sometimes updates and news can slip my radar and find me a little bit late. But, as the saying goes, better late than never. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a form of censorship, or is Brigitte Macron setting a standard that should be enforced more regularly against people who think they can say and do whatever they want on the internet? Let's make it very clear that there is a very big difference between hate speech and opinions/criticism. Also, do you think defamation would have been a more appropriate route for her to take rather than the very severe, I must admit, option of criminal prosecution? If these people are found guilty, they will have a criminal record and they face up to 2 years in prison. One can easily see how draconian and medieval that sounds coming from people in a position of power. All right, I think I'm going to stop it there. I'll keep a finger on the pulse with this verdict in January, just a couple of months tops. Can't believe the year is almost over. And at the same time, hopefully we'll hear from the court in Delaware if the case against Candace will indeed be dismissed. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.